This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, and welcome to Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network powered by Raven International. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. This is the show where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love. And as a reminder, I'm here to help you understand your dreams. So if you have a dream that's got you stumped, email me at debbie@dreampowerradio.com. I can help you interpret your dreams or answer any questions you may have about dreams. So again, my email is debbie@dreampowerradio.com. Well, I like to think of myself as a practical person. So I like to use dreams to help give me insights into specific problems and challenges facing me or my clients. But others look at dreams from a spiritual viewpoint, using them to connect to source or to their own higher power. Such is the case with my guest today, Geoff Nelson. Geoff is a retired Presbyterian pastor, the author of the book Dreaming in Church, and has conducted dream groups in churches. Welcome to Dream Power Radio, Geoff.
Thanks, Debbie. It's nice to be with you again.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Geoff, let's start off getting into this concept of dreaming in church, because I always thought of church, or in my case, temple, as a place where you sat and recited prayers and sang hymns. So how does dreaming fit into this?
Well, it happened when I was in seminary. Seminary is a 3-year professional degree program for clergy. And I took a class in the theology and psychology of Carl Jung. It was my very first quarter. The class wasn't all that spectacular for me. But after the class, I started keeping track of my dreams. And I've been doing so ever since. It's been it's been 45 years now that I've kept track of my own personal dreams. And about 15 years ago, I decided that I would go back and do more graduate study. And I got a Doctor of Ministry degree on the book title, Dreaming in Church. So I've been at this for quite a while and doing it specifically taking dreams into churches for about 15 years.
So before you went into seminary, did you have any interest in dreams at all, or was this something that was brought up specifically by that class?
It was brought up specifically by that class. To this day, I cannot remember a single dream before that class. I know I dreamt, we all do, but it just had not figured into my own worldview until I took that class.
Okay, so now let's talk about dreaming in church. What exactly do you mean by dreaming in church?
I mean using our nightly dreams, much more so than our imaginings and fantasies when we're awake. Using our nightly dreams as a spiritual practice. I began developing my own practice right at the time I started keeping track of my dreams, where I would make a very brief note while I was in bed. I had a pencil with a little pen light taped to it. I lost that this last summer, and so I can't show it to you. But I would use that and then turn it on at night, make notes about my dreams. And then in the morning, I would write them up in a journal, make some brief reflection on them, and then write a prayer for the day. Sometimes not, reflecting the content of the dreams. And that's what I've been doing for 45 years now. I've studied a number of spiritual practices, walking a labyrinth, Lectio Divina, meditation, praying the Psalms, a number of different spiritual practices that are prevalent in Christian churches, but none of them ever fed me the way my own dream life did. And that's why I've stuck with that. why I've pursued this particular practice and publicizing it, and why I wrote the book.
So can you give me an example of a dream that you had that led to one of these prayers, and how you actually use that in your day-to-day practical life?
Sure. My favorite is the dream that I had in the fall of 2003, where I dreamt I was living in Whittier, where I am now at the time, and I dreamt I was back in the house that I lived in Utah, where my first pastorate was. And in the dream, I went down into the basement where I had my own little study down there. But in the dream, there were many more rooms back off the back of my study. And I worked that dream with my spiritual director, and I realized that I used it as a call to go deeper into my own spirituality and my call from God. And as a consequence of that dream, I went back to 2 graduate school programs. I got the Doctor of Ministry degree, and then I got the diploma in the art of spiritual direction. So both of those have led me to the practice of recommending to Christians that they first of all pay attention to their dreams, try to write them down, and then work with them in some way. And I recommend, just because it's a fairly handy process, my own 3-step process of making a note of the dreams, doing a very quick interpretation of it, and then using that dream to sort of focus my prayers for the day. I've had numerous dreams that have inspired vacation Bible schools, adult Bible studies, sermon illustrations, many more than I can even count. The ways in which dreams have spoken to me through the content of my own life to see some place to which I believe God is calling me. And I think that's a formula that can work for Christians in particular, but for anybody who believes there's some sort of higher power that helps guide them in their life, or at least offer them suggestions for guidance in their life.
Interesting. So do you look at dreams as being something that you would call a gift from God?
Yes. Most of them, some of them. Throughout history, there have been a number of classification systems set up. And for me, there are the big dreams that are really important, like the one I shared about going down in my former home. And then there are the dreams that generally get not dismissed so much, but relegated as what we would call day residue. That is, many of us will have many dreams throughout the night, but we'll only recall a few of them. And even among those, many of them will be dreams of what seem to be inconsequential events of the day before. But I always want to ask myself, if I have judged something inconsequential, why did I dream about it? It has come back to me again in my dreams, and that at least calls me to take a second look at whatever that event was. And frequently it was just a matter of, okay, I will pray in that direction, or I will think twice about that thing. Not big life-changing events, mind you, but little reminders that there's stuff that happens in my life that my conscious mind doesn't always register. My dreams, if they remind me of those events, they call me back to at least look at the event one more time.
That's so true. That's something that, I teach my clients, and something I've learned is that you always look at how the dream relates to what's going on in your life, and that's going to give you the insights. And what you do, which is also something that is vitally important, is then taking the next step and actually activating that dream and using it in some practical sense to do something, just as you've done with all of your ministry work, which is one of the wonderful things about dreams is it enables us to do that. You talked a bit about different practices like meditation, which reminded me of something maybe like semi-spiritual. I'll ask you about this because I have a very good friend who is a very religious Jew who goes to synagogue every week, to pray. But she also says that one of the things that she really loves about being in the synagogue is it enables her to meditate as well. Do you see that kind of relationship in things that you see in your church?
Yes. The furnishings of a church are usually rooted in the historical tradition and religious symbolism of the faith. For example, this church I served here in Whittier for 28 years, we had stained glass windows all around the side, and the themes of the windows on the one side were biblical material, and on the other side, they were historical material. One could sit in church and look at those windows and essentially meditate oneself right out of the context. Now, as a preacher, I might want to say, hey, pay attention to me. But I understand the value of the mind going off in a different direction based on one of the visual stimuli that's around the edge. Now, I had a dream group in that church for quite some time, and occasionally some of the dreamers in the dream group would talk about their dream as being in the sanctuary and make reference to those windows. So there's a sense in which the physical place that you practice your faith may provide lots of prompts and reminders about the images and the power of those images that are a part of your faith. So I can see that happening in a synagogue, in a Buddhist temple, and a mosque, any number of places that have the religious symbols or prompts to meditation.
I want to get back to something you just were talking about, is the dream groups that you ran in churches. Tell me a little bit about that. And is there a difference between having a group set in a church versus any place else?
Yes. If it's set in a church and the dream group members are all believers, we have a certain language in common. We have the language of our scriptures, and as I mentioned earlier, the visual stimuli around us. Whereas in our sanctuary, one half of the windows were scriptural, the other half were historical. But having a common language, Christians, Jews, and Muslims all share to one extent or another the stories in the Bible, and those stories are rich in symbolism and psychic or spiritual energy. And to be able to tap into those stories through our dreams can be a very powerful motivating factor, and really help us act out on our dreams or act out on some of the deeper images in our religious tradition.
Did you find that the people who were in your dream groups had dreams that were mostly spiritually or religiously based?
I would have to qualify that answer. Not particularly. But the thing that would happen, particularly in church groups where we do have the Bible in common, we would talk about the image, be a person or a place or an event in one's life, and what's the value of this dream about that image in your particular life. And many people would make the connection themselves to another image or story in the Bible. And that was a sort of a convenient reference for us, that we could talk about our dreams, which could or could not relate more closely to the biblical story. But everybody in all the groups understood the value of the dreams themselves, independent of the relationship of their dream images to the scriptures. It's just, as you know, and all of the folks that we are in IASD with, our dream life is a very rich source of inspiration and insight for us.
And did you find that the people in the dream group had a deeper experience with their religious practice because of the dreams they had?
Yes, very much so. In fact, for my Doctor of Ministry degree, I ran 4 different groups in 4 different churches for a year, and then wrote it all up. And one of the interesting responses for me was that everybody in all the groups by the end of the year felt a closer connection to some of the symbolism and images in the scriptures that they hadn't paid attention to before. They were more involved in the rules and the laws or some of the history, perhaps. But once they began paying attention to their dreams, then some of the symbolism and images in the scriptures began to speak, if not more powerfully to them, they were more comfortable with those images and symbols than they had been before.
Very interesting. Well, we're going to talk more about this, but it's time for a short little break. So we are speaking with author and dream expert Geoff Nelson on Dream Power Radio, and we'll be right back. What do Thomas Jefferson, Elias Howe, and Paul McCartney have in common? They all understood the value of dreams, and as a result, the ideas, inventions, and creations from their dreams affect us to this day. What great ideas are you leaving on your pillow at night? Sign up for a complimentary consultation at my website, thedreamcoach.net, and discover why your dreams are a terrible thing to waste.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, and welcome back to Dream Power Radio. We are speaking with Geoff Nelson all about dreams, and in particular, religious dreams on Dream Power Radio. So, Geoff, I have a question. Do you find that the dreams of religious people differ a lot from dreams of non-religious people?
No. I'll give you a very short answer. What we do with the dreams, that may differ, but the actual content of the dreams and the process of dreaming, that's a universal experience. It happens with people in all cultures, all religions, all of that stuff. I think you're an IASD member also. You know that our conferences have people from all over the world, and we share those experiences as a universal language.
It's true, it is a universal language, and it goes so far in that direction. What is a difference between, or is there a difference between people who attend church and those who would just call themselves spiritual and don't go to a regular church practice?
I would say so, because those who attend church regularly will hear on a regular basis the foundational stories and ideas, images, and symbols of their faith. And they're sort of reminded of that each week. I like to think, in putting it in my own language, that the value of going to church or going to synagogue or mosque or whatever our religious practice may be, is that we are reminded of the source of our being, whether we call it God or universal consciousness or whatever word we may use, that we're reminded of that source, and we are also reminded of the behavioral aspects of our particular faith that we are called to. As a Christian, I'm called to love everybody, be open to forgiving everybody, and I need to go to church to be reminded of that regularly, because my own human tendency is not to forgive, to hold grudges, to differentiate between people, and it helps me to go to church regularly and be reminded that, in my case, God has another picture in mind for the world and the way we ought to get together in the world. And so it's that reminder and that reinforcement on a weekly or however often one goes to one's religious community. The reminder and the reinforcement is the most helpful.
Let's move off to a slightly different subject. One of the other things that you're involved in is being a labyrinth facilitator. For those who don't know too much about labyrinths, could you explain what they are and how you work with them?
Yes, a labyrinth is a design that's laid onto the ground usually, and it's a walking path. You know, if I had thought about it, I would have had a picture of one for you. But there's a path that's set out, and the practitioner walks that path, and they go all different directions, turning left and right, go into the center of the pattern and back out again, and then back into the center and stay there for a little bit, meditating perhaps on whatever visions they may have had, and then walking back out of the labyrinth. And there's a kind of a 3-step process for the labyrinth as well, that you are unburdening yourself, filling, and then going into the center, filling yourself again, and then coming back out into the world, similar to the way in which I like to practice with my dreams. But labyrinths have grown immensely in popularity, and you can find labyrinths in meditation gardens, church areas, just all over the place. And they're a wonderful practice. And there's a good way, I think, to use our dreams in a labyrinth, where the process of the labyrinth itself can function the way in which a dream group does. If I take a dream into the labyrinth and I want to focus on one image, I may walk a few turns in the labyrinth on that image and then stop and think about it. And my experience has always been that I get almost as much out of working a dream in a labyrinth as I do in a dream group, where different people will have their own perspectives on the dream. In the labyrinth, if I open myself up, some of those different perspectives will come on their own.
In other words, you're saying that the labyrinth enables you to expand your own thinking so that you can come up with those different images or different reflections by yourself, as opposed to talking it out with somebody else.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to ask you, as you were talking about it, what the connection to dreaming and labyrinths are, and it seems like I've walked through labyrinths and I hadn't really seen that connection before, but now I think maybe next time I go to a labyrinth, I'll try it out with one of my dreams and see what develops.
Yeah,
that seems like something.
We've done that and taught it at some of the regional conferences that we've done down here in Southern California.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings me to my next question, because you made reference before to the IASD, and for those who don't know, that's the International Association for the Study of Dreams. I'm a member, and Geoff, you're far more involved in it than I am. So I want you to talk a little bit about the organization, how you got involved with it.
Okay. The IASD has been around for 30-some years. I don't remember exactly how long, but I found out about them 15 years ago when I began to do my deeper exploration into using dreams in my own life. One of the first people I talked to as I began that exploration was the late Jeremy Taylor. And Jeremy told me about the IASD, and he also made reference to somebody else that became very important to me. That's Kelly Bulkley. Kelly became my project advisor for my Doctor of Ministry degree. Both Kelly and Jeremy talked a lot about the IASD. Both of them are former presidents of it. Jeremy was one of the 4 founders of it. And one of the things that they developed was an ethics statement, which I thought, as soon as I saw the ethics statement, I thought, this is a group that interests me, because as a church member, and when I was getting involved with them in the early 2000s, churches and other organizations were already experiencing some of the sexual and financial misconduct that really have sort of swept through institutions in this last 20 or 30 years. Not that they weren't happening, those activities weren't happening before, but now people are beginning to talk about it and deal with it in a sense of bringing some justice. But the IASD has an ethics statement that I think is very helpful, particularly for people who are trying to do dream work or trying it for the first time. And the bottom line of that ethics statement is that only the dreamer knows the meaning of the dream for sure. And once I realized that, it crystallized for me some of the feelings I'd had for the 20-some years I had spent doing my own dream work before I ever found out about IASD. during those 20 years, I would read stuff and I would think, well, this person thinks they knows what my dream is about. I don't agree with that at all. So when I found the ISD who said, only you know the meaning of your dream, oh, that was like finding an oasis in the midst of a desert for me. And I have become quite involved in it just because I think it's such a valuable process.
It is so true. And that whole idea of only you know what your dream means. I mean, it's so ingrained. That's why whenever I help people, like I always tell people, I can't tell you what your dream means, but I can help you with it. And, you know, in the, at least, you know, most processes, certainly the way I was taught to help people was to just keep asking questions until the person, you know, answers those questions, and through the answering of those questions gets that insight into what their dream might mean. And if they're totally stuck,
right,
and I have an idea, then I will preface what I want to say with, if it were my dream, so that I'm not telling you what it means. I'm just telling you that if it were my dream, this is what I would think it would mean, but it may mean that to you, may mean something else. But it is so true. And that is how people really can get the answers to their dreams. They just need prompts sometimes, or just a little bit of help, but everybody does know the answer to their own dream. But getting back to the IASD, you're based in Southern California, and recently there was a conference there. And I know that every time there are conferences, there are always people talking about, you know, new insights or new developments. So did you learn anything from the last conference you were at?
And it was the 5th regional conference that we've had here in Southern California. We started in 2008, so it's been 11 years now. And the insights that I keep finding are that there are a lot of people in Southern California who do not know about IASD and do not know about the particular I'll say safety and insight issues that IASD can provide. So it's always good for me to see new people show up at these conferences and say, gosh, I didn't know this existed before. We had 2 of our volunteers at the conference last Saturday that this was only the 2nd dream conference they'd ever attended, and they were already so enthusiastic they wanted to volunteer with us. And so to me, it's always encouraging to see new people get involved and be so excited and so inspired by dreamwork that they want to help the movement move along.
I tell you, it is so true, because, you know, you and I both understand the importance of dreams, and, you know, millions and millions and millions of people out there don't. And so every time you can get one more person to understand, you know, it opens up new worlds. Once you understand that,
yes,
you know, all those, you know, 8 hours or so you're sleeping at night, you know, the miracles can be going on if you only make yourself aware of it. So it is so vitally important. And the work that the IASD does in educating people about this is incredibly valuable. And all the work that you've done over the years in fostering that too has been, you know, very, very instrumental toward helping this movement grow. So I can't believe, you know, this time has just flown by so fast. So I just have time for one final question, which is, how can people find out more about you and about your book?
Probably best to go to, I have a website that I don't use very often, but it has material in the book. It's the Southern California Dream Institute, and the website is scdinet.net. And there's a section there that talks about the book, and also a little bit about dreaming in Southern California and some of that. But that's the major contact for me, or just contact me directly at ggNelson@ix.netcom.com.
Well, Geoff, thank you so much for being on Dream Power Radio today. We have been speaking with author and dream expert Geoff Nelson. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weisman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International.